Sharing my screen. Where is that here? Sharing my screen. Is that down here? Here it is. Share my screen. Okay. And share.
Looks good.
Is everyone able to see everything well?
Yes.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Do you guys just mind first? I know if you feel comfortable, if you can just show your videos, just so I like to know who I'm speaking to. Is that possible? Anybody? No? Because some of this is going to be interactive. And so I want to just see, for example, we have high school students, we have middle school students. Does anyone just want to start and unmute and just say something?
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Great. So this is debate. So in debate, we like to speak and we want to be confident in our speech. So again, if you can just say Assalamu alaikum and maybe just tell me if you're in middle school, what grade you are, in high school, what grade you are, just have an idea of who we're speaking to. And your name, please, first and last name. And maybe what masajid or masjid you're from.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zaif Mahmood and I'm in middle school.
What grade in middle school are you in?
8th grade.
Okay. And have you done debate before?
No, I haven't.
Okay. And which masjid are you from?
I go to the one in Leesburg, Islamic Latin.
Do you guys have a team already?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Someone else? We have one first brave person. Anybody else?
Assalamualaikum. My name is Moisan and I go to Harbor Park Middle School and I'm in 7th grade.
Okay. And have you done debate before?
No.
Okay. And where is your community?
My community is in Leesburg, Masjid, but we don't have the team for
Okay.
debate.
Great. Next. We have a lot of people on here, so. All right. Does anybody here have previous experience?
I was gonna. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zakaria Faisal. I guess I'm from a Huda school and I do 8th grade.
Do you have a team already?
Yeah, but no one's here. I just sent one person the link, so we'll see if he comes.
Okay. And did you say you've done debate before?
A little bit, not that much.
Okay, good. Anybody else want to speak up before we start? All right, so hopefully as you guys go on, we'll get some more sort of confidence in speaking, because many people on here are probably first-time debaters maybe, and so you don't have the experience yet, but inshallah, by the time you go through this program, everyone will inshallah have a lot more experience and confidence speaking. So let me first start by introducing myself a little bit in terms of saying, I am not a debater. I am a debate coach, and I've been the debate coach for ICM for the past 8 years. And I have to say that I've learned a lot about debating from much more experienced coaches like Brother Nasrul and Sister Faiza, who I've been fortunate enough to learn from just by being a part of this program. I want to also first say special thanks to the vision of Brother Mustafis, who was not able to be here today, but this program, MAFIC in general, and the MYDT program is amazing. I don't know if there's any potential coaches out there or people listening in, if you're thinking about coaching, I would just say go do it, because the experience I've had with this MYDT program has been amazing. And so want to get a shout out or special thanks to Brother Mustafis and this program. In terms of how I started here, just so anyone else could also start here in the same way, was back probably when my daughter was in 7th grade, and that was 8 years ago. 8 years ago, at that time, MYDT was going to different masjids and having the tournament every year at a different place. And they wanted to kind of do a grassroots efforts to kind of get different masjids involved. This is prior to COVID. Now we're more virtual. And inshallah, sometime maybe we'll be able to go more in live. At that time, a lot of people at ICM, the Islamic Center of Maryland, where I am in Gaithersburg, was really interested in participating in the tournament. My daughter wanted participation in 7th grade, but we didn't have a coach. Mainly because no one else wanted to be coach. I got volunteered to be the coach. And then I want to get out my next shout out to brother Hassan Ahmed. He was the coach of Al-Fateh Academy in Virginia at the time. And just like today's workshop, he was putting on a workshop then. So myself and the rest of the team, all new novice debaters, we all traveled down there. I still remember, I think it was a Saturday or a Sunday on a rainy day, all the way down to Virginia. We sat there and I was so impressed by his level of generosity and his selflessness in giving all this information to us. And at the time, I knew nothing about debate. And I left going, wow, so much information. So I sort of today want to pass it forward to you guys or anybody else out there who's listening to learn from what I learned from Brother Hassan and MYDT, to learn about debate and go forward, because debate is so important. It teaches us so much about public speaking, to interacting, communicating, whether or not you want to use it to get things, to persuade other people the way you want to do, whether it's you want to do dawah for a religion. All these things are important in debate, or even just public speaking. So moving on. So the title of my talk today, or my workshop, is Tips for Success in MYDT. I want to first say, what is success? Success, is it winning the tournament? Is it reaching the finals? Is it reaching the semifinals? Is it being the best speaker? If you say success is only winning a tournament or the finals or the semifinals, very few people are going to be successful. Winning the best speaker means one person in this high school division, one person in the middle school division. So I want to be clear, when I say tips for success today, I'm not talking about these things, because these are things that maybe if we're all professional debaters, maybe we're making our money on debating, these would be good things. But for MYDT and what I try to get out of it, and what I try to get my students and my team members to get out of it is different. So what do I think is my definition of success? So number one, improving your debate skills. At ICM, like probably most coaches, we have, myself like most coaches, we have day jobs. This is not our day job, coaching debate. So usually around 6 weeks before the tournament, I get a team together, we put a flyer out at the masjid, people show up, kind of like today, and we say, are you interested in debate? Yes, I'm interested, and we start the process. And now that I've been doing this for 8 years, I have a certain curriculum I have the kids go through, whereas they can get ready to debate within about 4 to 6 weeks and debate pretty much more accomplished when they started. And what I mean by that is improving your debate skills. Some kids, when they start, are barely able to speak. Some kids are shy. Some kids can't stand up. I've had one child actually even almost start crying when she was debating. But by the end, she was much better than she was before. So when we say improvement, we're not talking about being the best speaker. We're being better than you were before. And how do you get better than before? You get better than before by making mistakes. So one thing I want to say is you need to learn from your mistakes. We're not all perfect. And if you don't learn from your mistakes, you're never going to get better. Some of the best debaters I've ever had are the ones that are more what's called self-aware. They look at themselves and go, oh, I should have done that better. I should have done this better. And by doing those things, they get better. You go to your coach and you go, what did you think about the way I defined that definition or made the definition? Or what about that refutation? So part of improvement in life and in debate skills, of course, is by learning from your mistakes. So number one, That's one of my definitions of success. Any questions about that? Number two, my definition of success in MYDT tournaments is competing in a manner that makes your family and community proud. What does that mean? Well, as Muslims, inshallah, we try to raise ourselves to the highest standard, right? Or carry ourselves to the highest standards. Especially if you're participating in a tournament called the Muslim Youth Debate Tournament, you should compete in a manner that makes your family and community proud. What does that mean? Well, at the basic level, you should not be cheating. How could you cheat? Well, for example, during the debate, if you're looking up on the internet some ideas, which is not allowed, or if you reach out to your coach during the debate, that's not allowed. Or unfortunately, what sometimes happens is the outcome is not what you think. Sometimes an opposition has a great argument, and sometimes the proposition doesn't do as well, but the judge feels they did better. And you're like, how can this be possible? How can I have lost this debate when I did so much better or my team did better? So at that point, again, how do you compete in a manner that makes your family and community proud? Is that the time to start arguing and yelling at the judges, which I've seen before? That is not a good way to do it. These judges that we have in debate in the MYDT are volunteers, and they're all here to make us all better. So that, again, is something to keep track of. And also the third thing is how you treat your team members. We're all in this together to try to be better. And so sometimes one person, you may look at a team member and go, oh, we didn't win because of that person, or they shouldn't have said this. You should all try to lift each other up. We should carry ourselves in the best possible way in life, but also in this tournament. So that is important. This is sort of a skill that you learn by participating in debate and by doing these things. How can you compete in a manner that doesn't, you don't yell at the judges, you don't cheat, you help your teammates to get better together. So any questions on that? And lastly, most importantly, you want to have fun. I'm not sure how many of you came on your own, but some of you may be here because your parents made you come. But in the end, debate is about having fun. Most kids, unfortunately, are talked to most of the day. In school, you sit in classroom and someone teaches you or talks to you. I'm talking to you right now, and you don't get to talk. In debate, once you get that confidence, once you get that skill set, you get to stand up there and talk for 4 to 5 minutes, and they have to listen to you. That's fun. And that's what I think most of my students who come through our program like, the ability to debate, the confidence, and the skill set. So that's that. So that's my definition of success, and that's my hope that you'll get some tips with. So I want to go back to why I said it's not important for success to winning the debate, because everyone may not agree upon the winner. If you guys can look at this picture here, on the left, you see 2 sports. You see soccer and you see tennis. And then on the right, you see gymnastics and you see figure skating. Debate is more like figure skating or gymnastics and less like soccer or tennis in how the winner is determined. What I mean by that is there are judges on the sports on the right, there's no judges on the left. Everyone's going to agree upon who wins the soccer match. Whoever puts more balls in the goal wins. In tennis, whoever hits the ball across the net, it lands in bounds, and the other person misses more often wins. In figure skating, a judge or a panel of judges decides who wins based upon maybe one judge may say, well, I like their strong jumps or their twists and turns. They're so powerful. I'm going to give them more points for that. Where another judge may say, I prefer the artistic moves or their use and arrangement of music. Obviously, both are correct, but also there's interpretation in terms of which one is the winner. The same thing happens in debate all the time. Alhamdulillah, there is a rubric or a determination of who decides who wins. For example, the judges will decide based upon a rubric, but the same way as figure skating is judged, there is interpretation. So you may feel that you did the best, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And that's not necessarily the judge's fault, because there is some interpretation of what emphasis they put on certain things. So moving on from that point, these are the things they look at: manner, method, and matter. So at this point, I've said a lot of things. I'm not sure how many of you guys are still sleeping. So I need to ask somebody if anybody knows what manner is. These are the three criteria where you decide how a debate is judged. Anybody?
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, brother Zaif. Can
Yes.
you hear me? Yeah.
I can hear you.
Jazakallah khairan. I'm one of your students as well right now. I'm coaching for the Munayat.
Yes, of course. Brother Nasrullah, yeah, I mentioned you at the beginning of the debate.
So I have a couple of, how do you call the students as well? Sumaya Hassan, Sumaya Khan, all of them, Ifat Chaudhuri. I think you can ask them as well. If that, yeah, go ahead, please.
All right, well, someone's asked, tell me what manner is?
Is that like your delivery?
Right, so manner is exactly right. So it's exactly how you deliver your speech, right? So manner is, maybe some people say style or your delivery. Now let's move on to method. Does anyone tell me what method is? Anyone? I can't always see who's raising their hand when I have my slides up, so go ahead and just unmute and say what you think it is. So method is sort of how...
Method,
Go ahead.
Method is a way of doing something.
Right, so method is a way of doing something, and in debate, it's the way you give your argument. You know, one is, so for what I mean, it's like how you organize your argument in terms of your reasoning, your evidence, all that stuff, how you deliver it in an organized manner, and also how you use your teammates together. And also because it's a team sport debate, it's not one person speaking. So part of the method is how you use your teammates, your first, second, and third speaker together. And number three, time management goes under method too. We are constrained by certain time, which is good and bad because you don't want people to talk on for 20 minutes. But so you have 5 minutes, and how you use those 5 minutes or 4 minutes, how you use that effectively goes into method. Let's move on to matter. Does anyone want to tell me what matter means? Anyone?
Okay, what is going on? You need to talk, boys and girls. You need to talk. Right?
Yeah. So part of the interaction is important because you guys need to get the confidence to speak, and that's what's important. I think everyone knows what matter is. Matter is sort of the content, right? So what we're speaking about. So all these three things go together. You can have all the information in the world, but if you don't put it in an organized, a method in terms of the 5 minutes or the 4 minutes, you don't use your teammates together wisely, you don't have an organized method of doing it in terms of explaining it to the judge, it's not going to make sense. And if you don't have a style which is appealing, that's not going to be helpful either. So each judge may actually put more emphasis on one versus the other. I'll tell you one thing, I think what I, as a debate coach, I do put a lot of emphasis on manner, not because it's important for debate, but I think it's important for life. We're not going to be arguing, or you're not going to have a lot of friends if all you do is argue with them all the time. No one's going to like you. If all you do is argue, 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 there are some skills that are important to argue with and use. However, manner can be used always for public speaking. And that's why I think debate is useful. It's a competition, people like doing it, but in the end, you get a side benefit of learning how to speak clearly and effectively. And that's something you use in life as you get older, in school, in the workplace, whatever. So let's talk about, matter. So at ICM, I've come up with what I consider the elements of manner. This is something I go over with my teams all the time. It's called the VREEOGW. I wish I was really trying for a long time to come up with a word which would be easy to remember, but I can't come up with anything. So now I just say it quickly. VREEOGW. Volume, rate, emphasis, enunciation, organization, gestures, and word choice. I'm going to go over each one separately. So what this means is if you can master the elements of manner, you will become a good public speaker. Not necessarily the best debater, but debater is three facets: matter, manner, and method. But this is one of the things which I think is a lifelong skill to master. The first one, V, volume. So that is what you don't want to be. You want to be loud when you speak, right? You want to sometimes talk very loudly so people can hear you. But if you always talk at this loud level, people will think you're yelling at them. You don't always want to be yelling at them. However, if you only talk like this all the time, then people can't hear what you're saying. So you need to change your volume. It's sometimes loud, sometimes soft, because that gives people interest. If you always talk in the same manner, people will lose interest. Sometimes I do little tricks to help people master the volume. Can someone unmute and do one of my tricks? This is someone volunteered to just say yes, and I'll pick on you. It's easy. Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, so I want you to count to 10, all right? I know, I hope you can count to 10. And then I want you to 1 through 5, I want you to count very slowly. And then 6 through 10, I want you to count very loudly.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm gonna stop you now. So we're talking about loudly, not slowly, right? So here is where, right? So you want to go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then loudly. Right now you're counting slowly. So volume is how quietly you're talking and fast. And maybe I said it the wrong way. So just say, count very softly and then loudly. I'm sorry if I misspoke.
That's fine. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Good. So that's how you master the volume, right? So this is the next one, rate, which I think you were kind of showing already, which is like, sometimes you have to talk slowly so people understand, because if you're always talking quickly, then they're not going to hear what you're saying. But sometimes you have to talk really fast, because if you don't talk fast enough, you're not able to get all your points across because you only have 4 minutes to speak and you have a lot of refutations to make. Sometimes you have to really slow down to be able to give people time to understand what you're saying. Rate's important. You don't always want to speak at the same rate. Sometimes it has to be slow. Sometimes it has to be fast. Emphasis, the E. So we went VRE. Emphasis is sort of like in an essay where you put exclamation point, or you put highlighter, or you put italics. It's a way to tell people this is a point that is really important. Make sense? Next, enunciation. Will someone please unmute so I can go over enunciation?
Yeah.
Okay, so enunciation. The best way to, first of all, do you know what enunciation means?
No, I don't.
Okay. So the best way to describe enunciation is by saying the word enunciation. Enunciation refers to how clearly you speak your words, all right? So if you can say the word enunciation, then you know how to enunciate. There's a word just like enunciation called articulation. Means about the same thing. Again, if you can say the word articulation, you can articulate. So why don't you try saying the word enunciation?
Enunciation.
Right. Can you say the word articulation?
Articulation.
Perfect. So then when you speak your words, you should try to think about how you pronounce that word enunciate so clearly so that your words are clear to the audience. Make sense? Do you have any questions about that?
No.
Okay. Next, organization, right? So when you're organizing something, your thoughts should be organized. If someone's speaking in front of you and they have no organization, what they're going to say is, hey, what'd you think of that guy's talk? Well, I thought he was all over the place, right? So you don't want to be all over the place. You want to be organized, kind of like what this picture shows you. You need to have connections from one point to the other. Everything has to have a structure. Structure is so important in debate. Structure, structure, structure. Once you have structure, everything else can be filled in. Got it? It's kind of, you have to think about when you have a debate or an argument, you know more about the subject than anybody else. You know more than the judges. You have to explain it to the judges as if they've never heard it before. If you decide to have someone come to your house and you're like, all right, can you give me directions to your house? Well, let's pretend they don't have Waze or Google Maps. You would have to give them explicit instructions how to make every turn. Someone said they're in Virginia. If I told them, okay, no problem, you can come see me in Maryland, just go from Virginia to Maryland, then from Maryland to Germantown, and then you can find my house. That's not going to work. You have to hold their hand all the way through it with the instructions or directions. In the same way, you have to hold their hand through your arguments. Don't assume they understand everything you know. You need to organize it in a way that it makes it easy for them. Does that make sense? Gestures. Does anyone want to unmute and tell me what a gesture is?
Like, have signals with your hands to emphasize something.
Right. So gestures, exactly right. That's great. So gestures are using your hands, sometimes your eyes, sometimes your mouth, smiling, pointing at something. In virtual debates, there's less use of gestures, but you can still use them to a certain degree. In in-person debates, there's much more gestures, but you don't want to overuse them, because if you overuse gestures, that can be distracting. But what I call the judicious or use of gestures appropriately can be very effective, giving people interest. Word choice. This is a great time for you guys to improve your vocabulary, because words have power, and specific words that have impact, have power. So this is a great time to you guys open up the dictionary, learn a new word, and use it, because you get to speak and use it. If you speak and use it, it becomes yours to use. What I mean by that is, don't just use the word as that is bad, right? Rather than saying that, sometimes maybe say that is intolerable, or that is offensive, that is deficient. All bad, but gives us much better idea of what things are. And it also makes you sound much more intelligent if you have words that are stronger. And this is a great time to use word choice. So going back to my own elements of manner that I've come up with is VREEOGW, which stands for volume, rate, emphasis, enunciation, organization, gestures, or word choice. Again, manner is not the most important part of debate, but it will be a life skill that you can use forever. Do you have any questions? All right. So let's move on to the next point of debate. Oh, you have a question, somebody? So next point is matter. So we talked about that before, and matter is building your case. So that's the content. So number one, in debate, we talk about something called ARE, the assertion, the reasoning, and the evidence. In terms of our debates, the assertion is pretty much what they've already given to you, the proposal before the House, a claim, or a statement. For example, one proposal might be, it should be mandatory to wear uniforms in public schools. That's an assertion. However, that's not an argument. like your parents might come to you and say, you must wear this to this party because we say so. Do they have a reasoning? Do they have an argument? They don't need to, they're your parents. But in debate, you just can't say something. It needs reasoning and it needs evidence, and you need to explain yourself. Because remember, debate is two sides arguing against each other to prove that their side is correct. And how do you prove it? You use reasoning, which is the because, evidence. So going back to my example of uniforms should be used in public schools because there's a lot of peer pressure if kids have to wear their own clothes and they don't have the correct brand, designer shirts and pants that other people do. For example, a lot of kids say that they have a lot of peer pressure at school and they don't want to go to school because they don't have the clothes everyone else does. So that's a way of doing the argument for matter. You make a statement, the because is the reasoning, and you need to give some evidence. It doesn't have to be examples, but it often is. Does anyone have any questions about that? Because now I'm going to really need you guys to unmute and help me, because I'm not going to be able to proceed without your help. Okay? All right. So these are some examples from the middle school debate program. And you can see up here different assertions, different reasonings, and different evidence. These are here to train your brain to think like a debater. You guys think it comes natural to a lot of people, but you have to put it in an organized way. So let's look at the first one. Sometimes in debate, we say the proposal before the House, like the House of Parliament. The minimum driving age should be raised to 18. That's the assertion. So what's the reasoning? Because whenever I say reasoning, it's easy to remember because raising the driving age will save lives by reducing accidents. Well, that's nice to say that, but do you have any evidence? Yes. 16-year-old drivers have 3 times as many crashes as drivers 18 and 19. That's true. I mean, it's a lot more expensive to be a 16-year-old driver than an 18, 19-year-old. So let's try the second one. I'm going to go over it again. The proposal is television is a bad influence. That's what we're debating today. Is television a bad influence? Now you got to tell me the reasoning. Because it shows too much influence, too much violence. Now, what's the evidence for that? Can someone come up with an evidence? There's no right or wrong answer here. Just pretend you're a debater and you have to prove why television is a bad influence. Can someone please unmute?
Because television has a wide array of like channels, and the different channels can like affect what people watch.
Right. So you're saying that is a bad influence because, so where would you put that, what you just said? As evidence or reasoning?
I would say it's reasoning.
Right. Is a bad influence because there's a lot of different channels, but we're trying to do is we want evidence that kind of explains the violence, right? So you have to come up with can you come up with a reason why or proves why television shows too much violence?
Oh, because
Go ahead, you're breaking up.
so because most of the shows that people watch depict violence and like crime, it's a bad influence for people.
Okay, gotcha. So you're saying all of it together and it's excellent, but now you want to organize it for the judge. So we're saying television is a bad influence because television shows too much violence. For example, many of the shows today show, you said what, murders and violence, right? I think that's what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you you said all the right things, but you want to, again, organize it for the judge so it's easy for them to understand. It's hard for me to see the hand raising, so I see it come across really quickly. If someone has a question, just go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Okay, then let's move on to number 3. This is, again, same idea. this is a proposal before the House. The United States should not have the death penalty. We don't know what the reasoning is yet, but this is the evidence. Since 1973, 108 people in 25 states have been released from death row because they were actually found to be innocent. So can someone unmute and tell me what the reasoning is?
Yeah, the reasoning could be the United States should not have the death penalty because many people were found innocent who were on death row.
Right. So almost perfect, but the thing is, you already said the evidence, right? So you want to say the reasoning is, yes, you're right, because many innocent people are on death row and they may be killed, right? Because if they had the death penalty. So the United States should not have the death penalty because innocent people are on death row waiting to be killed, and they could be innocent. Look at all these people, and they could be killed if they are found to be killed, are found to be guilty and go through the death penalty. So now the next question, let's do the next one. I'm really happy you guys were chiming in. You guys have great answers. So here's the next one. We don't know what the proposal is, but we know the reasoning. Eating junk food is bad for your health. And the evidence someone says is junk foods are high in fat and sugar. Too much fat and sugar puts you at risk for diabetes and heart disease.
The assertion should be junk food should lower the fat and sugar in them.
Not the assertion, because junk, that would be like you're saying an argument against what they said. So you want to say, does anyone else have a?
I have one.
Okay.
Eating junk food is bad for your health.
Well, that's the reasoning they have here, right? So what are they trying to prove? What's the assertion, you think?
Maybe something like stores should stop selling junk food in the checkout lines.
Right. Who said that?
Zakaria.
Oh, wow, Zakaria. All right. Whose team are you on?
I'm with Omar and Saad. I'm not sure where Saad is, if he's here or not.
Okay, great. Are you a part of Munna?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. So that's right. That's exactly right. So people should not be sending, the assertion is you should stop selling junk food in the checkout lines because eating junk food is bad for your health. Well, okay, well, who cares? Well, the evidence shows junk foods are high in fat and sugar, and too much fat and sugar puts you at risk for diabetes and heart disease. Now it gets harder, okay? Now it's really getting harder because now we have two spaces to fill. Both the assertion, which is a proposal before the House, and we also have the reasoning and evidence. So what would you say? Here's the reasoning is allowing younger people to vote would increase their involvement in politics and society.
So the assertion, it can be that younger people under the age of 18 should be able to vote, and the evidence supporting that is that now kids these days are unconnected with politics, and they're clueless. They get clueless when they grow up, so they don't know, like, they don't have any common sense on on what to do.
All right, great. Who said that?
Niall.
All right, Niall, good. And you're also with Munna?
No, this is my first time doing a debate class.
Oh, wow. Do you have a team?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, you need to get a team. All right. Where are you located?
I'm in Virginia.
Okay, great. The next one. This is two blocks they're missing. All right. Assertion and reasoning. All we have is evidence. So we have evidence is incidences of school violence have shown that students use their cell phones to notify police and parents. So just like Niall said, has a great way of filling those two blocks. Now all we have is evidence. And now we got to come up with a proposal and the because we already have the for example. So now it gets harder.
Can I say it?
Yep, go ahead.
The assertion would be schools should allow phones in schools. And the reasoning would be because of school violence that's happening all across the USA.
Right. So that's the evidence. But you have the reasoning would be you have to do something more with there's no connect. You're on the right track, but there's no connection. You're saying there's school violence everywhere and you have phones. But why do you need the phones because of school violence?
I have.
Uh-huh.
So it could be, like phones should be allowed in schools, and reasoning should be in case of emergencies or something.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. So just like a team, I love the way you two work together. That's how teamwork works in debate. One person gets an idea, they're the first or the quickest, like the previous person, but they're not quite there yet, but they're the catalyst. They're the ones who got the point across, but then the other person comes in and helps them along. That's teamwork. So that's what debate's about. So number one, the assertion is phones should be allowed in schools because they can be used in emergencies. Incidences of school violence have shown that students use their cell phones to notify police and parents. Excellent. So now you guys understand the ARE method. You guys understand that, right? Do you have any questions about that and how you use it for the matter? All right. Okay. So very happy with the way you guys did that. That's great. And then remember, it's your only first day. So now this is my image of two possible debate teams. We have the proposition debate team and we have the opposition debate team. So we have an assertion before the House or proposal, and the proposition has all their ARE arguments. Typically, they will come up with maybe 3 to 5 arguments or points, and the opposition will maybe come up with 3 to 5 points. And they are very precisely with precision and on a wall describing with their swords there, all their arguments and all their reasonings and their evidence. It's really, really good. The proposition is given their side, the opposition is given their side. Why is this not debate? Anyone want to unmute and tell me why this is not debate?
Because they're not refuting each other. There needs to be clash.
Right. Who said that?
Fatima.
All right, Fatima, mashallah. So you need the clash, right? So debate is not two teams saying their own thing. It's not the proposition making all their ARE arguments, and it's not the opposition making their ARE arguments. It's clash between each other. Without clash, there's not debate. There's just 2 speeches, or 6 speeches, I guess. Okay? So remember this. When you think about debate and what it's not, think about the 2 fencers who've done a really good job, but they're not facing each other, and then the 2 fencers facing and clashing with each other. So how do we clash in debate? It's called refutation, okay? So some people call this RBBT. I prefer to say they said, but, because, therefore, and the RBBT stands for R is restate. But I feel like it's easier if you just say they said, because that's what you're really saying. They said, but, because, therefore. And remember, think of it like a ping pong or table tennis match. The proposition says something, sends the ball across the table. The opposition has to hit it back by refuting. And then they have to refute back, and then back, and then back until someone's argument doesn't hold up or their paddle doesn't hold up. Make sense? So they said, but, because, therefore. That's how you refute. That's how you participate in the clash. Questions? So here's 2 examples. Proposition 1, opposition 1. So the proposition comes up, and this is their proposal before the House. They come up there saying, hey, zoos do more harm than good because the animals are kept in settings which are unnatural. They cause depression and psychosis. So then that sounds terrible. Opposition has to get up and say, refute some of that. So they come up and say, hey, zoos do not do more harm than good as they provide important ways of species conservation and preventing extinction of species such as the California condor and the Iberian lynx. Also very good. So both of these are very good examples of ARE in terms, at least some, the arguments per se. Why do you think this is not good for debate? Anyone?
They're not. Opposition didn't really refute what the proposition brought up. They just brought up their view, their own thing.
Right, exactly. So there's no clash here. This is the 2 fencers facing away from each other. Proposition has some good points about zoos do more harm than good, and opposition has come back. But the judges are going to look at that. There is a burden of proof on the proposition, and the opposition has a burden to refute, and they haven't done that. So here's another example how it should have maybe went. Proposition 1 says zoos do more harm than good because the animals are kept in settings which are unnatural and cause depression and psychosis. Terrible. Opposition was, what do? They use the skill of refutation. They use the clash. They say, they said animals are kept in settings, they said, which are unnatural and cause depression. But this is not true because scientists are now using technology to recreate environments to mimic the wild. Therefore, zoos do not do more harm than good. So that's the refutation. They said, but, because, therefore. In addition, if it wasn't for zoos' conservation efforts, species such as the California condor and Iberian lynx would be extinct. So if you can see here, they refuted and they added their own argument. So now they get an extra point. Hopefully proposition come back and say something different. So that is an example how refutation works. Questions about that? It's important to keep good notes. This is actually a skill that can go on to your college or high school. So when you're doing notes, I always tell my students to make columns like this, put all the speakers, and every point has to be put down there and every point needs to be refuted. And then the refutations of the refutations. So a lot of times you have to write quickly. Sometimes you have to have abbreviations, but without doing good flowing, as we call this, you're not going to be able to catch all the points and be able to refute the points as needed. And this is not something that works as well you might be able to do this quickly on a computer, but eventually if you go into the in-person debates, there's not going to be any computer, so you should really get in the habit of using pen and paper and doing this. Do you guys have any questions about that? All right. So I'm not going to go into big detail about this because of lack of time, but for people, there seems to be some new debaters here. And just to let you know, each debate team is made up of 3 speakers. They're the names there. I'm not going to say them all because it's just going to get confusing, but each speaker gets a certain allotted time. And you can see there, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes. And each speaker has a different role, which I'm not going to go into great detail today. That's something that I think is additive and is important to know, but it's going to be too much information all at once. But these are the 6 different speakers, 3 on each team for the debate. I would recommend, if you want to be successful, I would recommend you assign your speaker positions, or as a coach, I think it's best if this coach assigns your speaker position. Just like on a soccer team, there's always going to be that athlete or that speaker who can do all the positions, right? There's going to be that best athlete who can be the forward, can be on offense, can be on defense, can be the goalie, maybe even the coach, but he can't or she can't do all of it, right? So every soccer team each person has a position that they're specialized in. In the same way, you may find on every team one debater who can do all 3 positions the best, but they can't do all 3 positions. So what I typically do is once I meet my team, usually what happens is I send out a flyer to ICM about 4 to 6 weeks before the tournament. And I say, anybody interested? Once I meet who's there, I kind of run them through the practices, and each one does speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3. And after a few days of doing it, I realize what their best place would be. And then I say, listen, you're a first speaker, you're a second speaker, you're a third speaker. And it doesn't mean that one is a better speaker than the other. It's just like, is a goalie more important than an offensive player or more important than a defensive player? No. Or in basketball, a guard or a forward or a center or a quarterback or a defense alignment, they're all important positions. But there are certain skill sets that would be better served by certain people's skill set. I mean, certain positions will be served by certain people's skill set. So assign your speaker positions. Some final thoughts I just want to go over before we wrap up. And if you guys have any questions, I think it's important to use a communication method, especially for virtual debates. You guys probably know a lot more about these tech things than I do, but what I've heard from my students has been they like to use Discord or Google Hangouts because you need a way of communicating while the debate's going on, because you can't really speak to them because you're not going to be in the same room. I would go back to what I said before in terms of conducting yourself in a manner that makes your community and family proud. I would not use that communication method to cheat. I would not use it to look up on the internet. I would not use it to communicate with your coaches during the actual debate. Also, you should come up with refutations to your own arguments. The reason for that is you're not going to know what side you're on until the flip of the coin. So you should always be ready to refute both or be able to argue both sides. But if you're always looking at what would they say to this, you're going to be able to come up with a refutation to their refutation. So always think ahead. I didn't really go over POIs today because of lack of time, but I think you should use them. And maybe at some point down the road, you can discuss them, and also managing your time. Make sure you have a way of keeping track of how much time you have. Use a cell phone or a clock or some way to keep track of time, because you need to know how much time it's going to be to do your arguments, how much time it's going to be refutations, how much time to actually summarize at the end. And that's the organization part of it. So that's all I have to say today. Hopefully that's been helpful and a start. Do you guys have any questions? No questions?
Would you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
Can you explain us the note that you showed us? You put some abbreviation there.
The note.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think it was just referring, you mean the flow chart, the flow sheet, right?
I think, yeah, you put the
vertical lines. Yeah. So pretty much at the top, those at the top is really the names of the speakers. So first proposition constructive, second opposition constructive. So OC, PC. So that's how it's pretty much just listed at the top. That's mainly the abbreviation, just to know who the speakers are. Usually I usually have 5 columns, even though it's only six speakers, because remember in debate, it goes proposition, opposition, proposition, opposition, then opposition, proposition. So what I mean by that is 2 opposition speakers speak right back to back with each other, and the last proposition speaker has to refute everything. So I put them in one column together, so it's easy to remember all the points they both bring up.
Brother, this is very important. Please don't take the notes. This is really important.
Yeah, I think notes is very important. I mean, it's a note for life, but you know what ends up happening is people think I can remember it or whatnot, but the judges are taking very good notes, and you may go, oh, I got all their points, no problem. But there may be some, and sometimes it's the silliest of points. Maybe it doesn't make any sense, but if you don't address it in some way, one judge will say, oh, you lost the debate because you didn't address that. Even if it doesn't make sense, there's no relevance to it. You tell them, they mentioned this point, it wasn't relevant, there's no significance to it, so that point does not stand. But you at least need to, otherwise if you don't address it, it's going to stand. Any other comments?
Sumaya Hassan, Sumaya Khan, Zakaria.
All right, so let me see. Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. I mean, I don't want to keep you here forever in terms of if, did the hosts from Mafik have any other things to add?
I actually have a question. Sorry.
Okay.
What do you do if you can't think of a refutation and your teammates can't think of a refutation? What do you do about that point? Do you mention it, or like what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, that's the hard part, right? You need to get practice at doing something, you know? I mean, there's different ways to refute something. You can refute it in terms of the relevance of what they said, the significance. So I think you have to somehow come up with something that is different about it. And you got to figure out why they came up with that argument. You know, sometimes people will say arguments because there's, I'm not going to go into the details of it, something called logical fallacies, where they will say, oh, this is true because, like, for example, CDC said this is true, so that's why this is happening with COVID. Just because an authority says it's true doesn't mean it's always true. So in the same way, you have to kind of cut to those little things and figure out what you come up with things. You have to make sure that their reasoning is sound and try to come up with something. Because if you don't address it, it's going to still sit there, and they'll come back the last speech and go, they didn't address our point, and it still stands.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, just try your best to come up with, and the thing is, sometimes what happens is, let's just say you're the second speaker and the first speaker is already done speaking. They have a lot of pressure done, right? They're done. They're the person who really hopefully will give you some tips, because their mind is not so worried anymore because they've already spoken. So that's when they can use Google Hangouts or Discord and send you a message and go, that's how you refute it. Any other questions? All right. Then going back to the Mothic organizers.
Assalamualaikum, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Shanavas, for leading today's workshop. I think we will end here. And inshallah, this link will be on the YouTube. So if anyone wants to reference back to today's workshop, feel free to kind of go back there and kind of look through everything. And inshallah, we'll be having another workshop, I believe, on the 23rd. I have to check, but look out for more details, inshallah. Thank you again, Dr. Shanavas.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.